fisherman without fishing tackle and access to a boat and a body of water, and one is not a golfer or a gardener without the possession of or the means of acquiring golf clubs and gardening tools. Furthermore, in an exchange economy, it is economic calculation based on money prices that gives meaning to a collection of different kinds of concrete goods and enables the actor to transform these goods into an integrated structure of property suited to his system of ends. Without money prices to guide him in his calculations, a person is unable to specialize in a particular profession or business because he can never know whether these activities will help sustain his existence. Furthermore, one does not know the degree of his success or his position in the social structure unless he can calculate the monetary value of his possessions. Has he achieved eminence or suffered crushing disappointment? Is he a prince or a pauper? You don't know without economic calculation. People do not even know what or who they will become in the future without knowing the monetary value of their accumulated savings and assets. All their plans for themselves and their children are shaped by this knowledge. Will they likely be spending their golden years as retirees in nice gated communities in North Carolina, or will they be greeting customers at Home Depot? Money and property are thus essential elements in the socio-economic process, conditioning what an individual human being is and can become. Without economic calculation based on sound money, not only is it impossible for entrepreneurs and businesses to reasonably calculate the outcome of alternative production decisions, it also becomes problematic for a person to even know who he is or to reasonably assess the possibilities of who he can become. During the German hyperinflation, for example, university professors and high-ranking civil servants on relatively fixed salaries could no longer support themselves and their families. And overnight, they became taxi drivers and waiters because they were working for tips that were immediate and whose value didn't dissipate within the 2 weeks or a month that they would have gotten paid. And that's true with all that implies for their professional and personal relationships, future prospects, and social position. Okay. Now let me talk about the destruction of property and personality during a real hyperinflation. In the extreme case of hyperinflation, as the value of money hurtles towards zero, property loses its meaning, human personality withers, and society disintegrates. This all-important connection between money and property on the one hand and human personality on the other was dramatically and poignantly expressed by the German historian and sociologist Conrad Haydn, an observer of the great German hyperinflation that culminated in 1923. By the way, Haydn was one of the first ones to actually fight Hitler. He put up posters in 1920, anti-Nazi posters in 1922 and 1923. And he got beat up for his trouble. All right, so I'm quoting Haydn. The German people was one of the first to witness the decay of those material values which a whole century had taken as the highest of all values. The German nation was one of the first to experience the death of the unlimited free property which had lent such a royal pride to modern humanity. Money had lost its value. What then could have any value? Of course, many were accustomed to having no money. But even with money, you had nothing. That was the twilight of the gods, as horrible as anything Wagner could have foreseen. A cynical frivolity penetrated men's souls. No one knew what he really possessed, and some men wondered what they really were. Unquote. Haydn's insights are illustrated in the statements of a woman who lived through the German hyperinflation. Erna von Pustow, a middle-class resident of Hamburg who was interviewed by the eminent American writer Pearl S. Buck. Pustow's reminiscences reveal how the German people lost their intellectual and spiritual moorings amid the calculational chaos of hyperinflation. The inability to perform simple arithmetic calculations with money that were a matter of routine in the past sowed confusion of thought and wreaked havoc with language. As Pustow recalled, and I'm quoting her now, "But, you see, we could hardly say that our mark was falling, since in figures it was constantly going up and up and up. Prices were going up, and the exchange rate, how much I had to pay for British pounds and American dollars were going up. And this was much more visible than the realization that the value of our money was going down. It sounds confusing, doesn't it? But this confusion belongs to inflation, is inseparably connected with it, and was one of the reasons why the people gave up thinking things out. It all seemed just madness, and it made the people mad," unquote. Referring to a popular song of the day, Pustow quoted the following line, quote, "We are drinking up our grandma's little hut and the first and second mortgage too," unquote. She then remarked, saving is the very source of wealth and health of a sound nation, but we no longer have a sound nation. We are on our way to become a crazy, a neurotic, a mad nation, unquote. Pustow also commented on the spiritual trauma inflicted by the sudden collapse of the social structure, lamenting, quote, "It was a sad world, a world in which none was better than the other and all was a matter of chance and degree. A sad world and a sad conception for a girl who still remembered the good old times of grandmothers. Our times made us cynical." Now, a music lover, Pustow related an ordeal in which she and other suddenly poverty-stricken middle-class friends were forced to wait for hours in line to purchase standing room tickets to see Wagner's The Twilight of the Gods. Most of the seats in the theater had been bought by dilettantes who chose to attend not because they were genuine music lovers, but because they had gained a windfall from inflation, and they were now the nouveau riche and wanted to be seen in high society. So all personalities were just jumbled up and changed. This incident impressed on Pustow that the malfunctioning of money penetrated to the very core of one's self-identity and radically reshaped her most cherished goals and beliefs about the world. Thus, she stated, and I'm reading, "Wagner's gods set fire to the entire world, yet they did it for great things, for heroic deeds, for love, for this beautiful thing, love. And how is it with us? We fight for tickets, we fight for pennies. It is these ugly little things that break us down. It was all so mixed up with money. We used to consider money as nothing, and we said, money is dirty, and one doesn't speak about money. And here, everything was mixed up with money, and with small sums only and small things." Pustow summed up her recollections of the hyperinflation by comparing the cultural and moral effects of hyperinflation to those of war. For a battle it was, this inflation. And I'm quoting her here. "The cities were still there, the houses not yet bombed and in ruins. But the victims were millions of people. They had lost their fortunes, their savings. They were dazed and inflation shocked and did not understand how it happened to them and who the foe was who had defeated them. Yet they had lost their self-assurance, their feeling that they themselves could be masters of their own lives if only they worked hard enough. And lost, too, were the old values of morals, of ethics, of decency." Haydn, now talking about the sociologist, vividly summarized the general lesson of the experiences of the millions of Germans like Erna Pustow who were caught up in the hyperinflation. So Haydn writes, "Man had measured himself by money. His worth had been measured by money. Through money he was someone, or at least hoped to become someone. Men had come and gone, risen and fallen. But money had been permanent and immortal. Now the state had managed to kill the immortal being, or the immortal thing. The state was the conqueror and successor of money, and thus the state was everything. Man looked down at himself and saw that he was nothing." Unquote. Thus, as Haydn keenly perceived, in Germany, the abolition of money obliterated the ontological, through hyperinflation, rendered property meaningless, and thereby obliterated the ontological basis of the formation of the human personality. Social and economic institutions, long taken for granted, disintegrated and disappeared. And the social structure itself began to dissolve, causing human existence to become atomized and aimless. Thought, language, values, culture, all were deformed, as the interior life of the individual was inexorably drained of meaning and purpose, and in large measure extinguished. Okay? So those are my words. Now, Haydn concisely summed it up. Quote, "The state wiped out property, livelihood, personality, squeezed and pared down the individual, destroyed his faith in himself by destroying his property, or worse, his faith and hope in property. Minds were ripe for the great destruction. The state broke the economic man, beginning with the weakest." Now, when Haydn talks about economic man here, he does not mean the atomized economic man, homo economicus of economic theory. He means the bourgeois man, okay, the bourgeois personality, the real historical being. Now let's talk about the state as a successor of money and the molder of personality. There was nothing definite left but the state to fill the economic and spiritual vacuum created by the German hyperinflation.